Hi folks, my name is Richard Holden, and in this episode we're going to show you how to make a beautiful Christmas ham with a mustard, maple and marmalade glaze. We've got a 2 kilo piece of ham here. We're going to cook it on our charcoal barbecue. We're going to show you in the video how to set up your barbecue for roasting, how to maintain the temperature and control it all the way through the cook, and how to make sure that it's perfectly cooked at the end. So as I say, we've got a piece of ham here. It's just over 2 kilos in weight, and it's a raw piece of ham. We haven't boiled this, we haven't soaked it in milk or anything like that. We don't really need to do with the modern hams. They're not quite as salty as they may have been of our parents and grandparents' generation. Also, if we poach it to begin with, when we go put it on the barbecue with the wood chips, we're not really going to get as much smoky flavour in there because the outside will have started to cook. So, rind has been taken off. You can either do this yourself or get your butcher to do it. Mine did it for me. That there's as much fat left on there as possible. In this pan here, we have our glaze, which I've already made up. The glaze is a mixture of mustard, marmalade, maple syrup, and some soft brown sugar, as I mentioned. And then we've also got the juice and zest of an orange. Now what you do, 75 grams of each of these, and then the zest and juice of one orange. That goes into the pan. We heat that so that we dissolve the sugar, and we incorporate that orange juice into all those other ingredients. And we just bubble it down just until it's a nice syrupy consistency that when we brush this onto the ham later on, it will stick rather than running off. I've gone for 75 grams of the Dijon mustard, but if you like a bit more punch in your ham, then go for the Coleman's English, or if you like a little bit of texture, you can go for a whole grain, or you can do a blend. So if you want something that's a little bit mellow with a bit of punch still, maybe blend the Dijon and the English mustard, but that is completely at your discretion. Basically 75 grams of mustard. So what we need to do to start with is we're going to score the ham. I'm just going to take a little sharp paring knife and just start to cut this. We're just scoring the fat on the top. We're not cutting down into the meat. And we're just taking this and we're just going to go, it's going to be a centerpiece for a Christmas table. So we're just going to be a little bit careful with this and just do a little bit of a design. So take those at an angle, and my butcher's actually pretty much done the other angle for me. So if we just take those, now some recipes, some traditional recipes would have you take a bunch of cloves and skewer every diamond. If you want to do that, be my guest. But in this one, we're going to just keep the glaze on the top and keep this nice and simple. So now that we've done that, that's pretty much all the prep we need to do. Now we're ready to go to the barbecue. We've got a chimney starter in the barbecue, 3/4 full with a briquette fuel. Briquettes give a longer burn, they give a more steady burn, a more even burn. So for roasting, they're really, really good. We're going to set this up for an indirect roast. So I've got the 2 baskets in there, one on the left, one on the right. And we'll pour half of the fuel into one side, etc. Tray in the bottom, because this is for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's going to capture any of the glaze that drips off that ham. And let's face it, this is a really sweet, syrupy, sugary glaze. It's going to caramelize. And when it hits the ash in the bottom of the barbecue, it's going to make a real mess. So the tray is going to capture that to make sure that that stays nice and clean. The second thing, we're going to put some water into there, which will add a level of extra humidity to the barbecue. So it'll keep our ham beautiful and juicy. So we're going to go over to the barbecue. We're going to pour these in. Our chimney is lit, our fuel is perfectly lit, we're ready to go. So if we just tip half of this into one side, and then we do the same on the other with the remaining fuel. So this is what's known as a roasting or an indirect heat setup, where we've got fuel either side, nothing in the middle. Let's pop that safely to one side. Any extra coals we can just rearrange. So basically we've created an oven, or we're going to create an oven in here, where we've got basically the central section completely void of any fuel. So what we need to do now is grab our foil drip tray. So that's going to go in the bottom. And then I grab my jug of water. If your barbecue is running a little bit hot, this will also absorb between 10 and 15 degrees C. So if your barbecue is running a little bit warmer, you want it to be 200 and it's running at say 210, 215, you can add a tray of water and it will drop that heat out. So let's take our cooking grate, just pop this in. And we've positioned this so that the hinged sections are over, this barbecue model has hinge sections, so we position those over the banks of coals because we're going to add some wood chips to this as well to give it that smoky flavour. We're going to add the ham, so that's going to sit in the centre. If you're new to roasting, you do not need to turn the, if you're new to roasting on your barbecue, you won't need to turn the food over in this cook because the heat is going to rotate around the meat. Couple of things we need to do. We've got some hickory wood chips in here that have just been soaking in some water. 20 minutes, you're good to go. So we'll lift those hinge sections up. We'll take a good handful. Drain the excess water off. Sit those straight onto the coals. If you're on a gas barbecue, you can absolutely do this. You can either make a foil pouch, or you may have a smoker box which goes straight onto those angled pieces of metal underneath the cooking grate, and you just need to make sure that the barbecue is producing smoke before you put your food on. Charcoal barbecues, pretty much instant. Now, one thing we are going to do with this as well is we're going to just add a little bit of technology. We're just going to use this external temperature probe. So if we switch this on, there we go. Now this one's already set up for 74 degrees. I'm just going to add that, get that probe into the center of the meat, and then we pop the lid down. Top vent open, bottom vent open. Airflow needs to be going through that barbecue. This is your exhaust. If you close this one, you'll suffocate the coals. If you close the bottom one, you'll starve the coals of fresh air coming in. This will smoke for about 15 to 20 minutes. We always want the smoke at the beginning of cooking. So this is going to smoke for about 15, 20 minutes. After that time, I'm not going to add any more wood smoke to the barbecue. Just going to move away. I'm not going to add any more wood smoke to the barbecue because I don't want to overpower it with that flavor. We want to be able to taste everything else as well. So we'll come back and just check on the progress of our ham. Looking at the thermometer, we can see that we've got a core temperature mid-40s, so I'm happy, and we're going to start. I'm always happy when we're cooking Christmas food, but we're going to start to add our glaze. If we do this too soon, it's just going to burn by the time the cooking's finished. So bring this over, grab your pot with your glaze, and then the first time, we're just going to really get this on, get a nice thick coat onto that ham. Get it all down the sides, on the front, on the ends as well. Really work it into those scores that have nicely opened up. And this is where that water tray underneath is going to come into its own a little bit as well, because it's going to capture any of those extra bits of sauce that just drip off. So now that we've got first glaze on, let's make sure that we don't miss any bits. There we go. Lid down, and what we're going to do now is every 5 to 10 degrees on here, we're just going to go back in, we're going to add another layer of glaze. If you need to, keep an eye on the thermometer on the lid. If it starts to dip, just add a few briquettes. With the briquettes that I'm using, the Weber Long Last, just add 2 or 3, maybe every half an hour, after about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that will just maintain the temperature. Just drip feed those coals in. And I'm able to do this because I'm using a natural fuel. If your fuel needs to be lit before you can cook on it, then you can't drip feed, but with this one I can. So we're just going to keep an eye on the temperature and just keep coming back and just add another layer of glaze to that, just little and often, just to make sure that it keeps nicely caramelizing on the top there. Right, we have been coming in every 5 or 10 degrees since we last saw you, and just pasting this, just basting it with an extra little layer of the glaze. Our temperature probe says that we're now at 74 degrees C. 75 degrees is cooked safely. Anything like gammon, chicken, anything like that, we want to make sure that it's cooked through, has to be 75 degrees. 1 more degree, it's going to carry on up to that temperature at least. Probably when we take it off and let it rest, it will probably climb an extra 5 or 6 degrees, so we are absolutely safe here. One thing that we're going to do is just take, where's my towel gone? Here we go. We're just going to take this probe out because we don't want to, we don't need that anymore. That's done its job. The little temperature probe actually has an alarm that we can set. So we set that for 70 degrees and then we just kept an eye on that. Let's just take this out this way. Right, so over we come. How's about that? Now, you would normally let this rest. I personally like this cooked ahead, 1 or 2 days. You're good for 3 days once it's chilled and in the fridge. I personally like this as a cold cut, either on the Christmas Day evening buffet, if you can manage any more food Christmas Day night, or Boxing Day, or one of those days between Christmas and New Year when you got people over and you just want something a bit different. We are going to go ahead and just slice this so that you can see the inside. It looks quite dark on the outside. The smoke really gave a nice layer of color to this to this gammon as we at the beginning of the cooking process, and then the caramelization of the sugars within the maple and the marmalade and everything during the cooking process has just added to that level of color. But the really beautiful thing is if we just cut this open, we can see that we have the most beautiful pink flesh on the inside of this, and you can see the steam coming off here. You can see how juicy that is. Absolutely juicy as you like. One of the benefits of cooking outdoors, folks, is that your barbecue, especially in the Northern Hemisphere in the winter, your barbecue is going to draw in that damp air, and it's going to help keep your food nice and juicy and succulent. The tray of water that we have underneath this this ham during the cooking process is also going to add to the steam. So I think what I'm going to do is just have a little taster. And what I'll also say is that the recipe is going to be in the caption below, so take a look at that. There'll also be a link to the blog on my website. You can take a look at that yourself as well. Any of the products that we've used will also be down there. Subscribe to the channel. Let us know if you cook this dish this Christmas, and subscribe to us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. All that's left for me to do is have a taste. So Merry Christmas, folks. Let's have a taste of this ham.